just been connected to the largest spiritual network on the planet, The Jeffrey Daugherty Show. Jeffrey Daugherty. Sink or swim, deep end information, parabiblical research, spiritual technologies, personal empowerment. Be your own guru. Guide your own spirit. Master your own ascension. And now, showing you how, here's Jeffrey Daugherty.
Well, hello, folks. Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian whistleblower. Thank you, Cliff. Back again. Today we're finishing up the interview on Unknown Origins Radio with Mark over the Dark Matter Radio Network. 2 great days of interview that we've had on Monday and Tuesday. And tonight we're going to finish up with this exciting interview and more stuff that you're hardly going to be able to believe is coming up tonight. Far-ranging, wide-ranging, exciting, entertaining, and really tremendously interesting interview covering just about everything that we have done, everything we are doing, and everything we want to do. Tomorrow night we'll be back with a regular program. And I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to talk about. I'm either going to talk about dying lost or talk about beyond the Bible. I'm not sure which one, but either one is going to be something you don't want to miss. But right now, without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and join the interview already in progress
of Jesus.
Okay. Now, getting back on the exorcism discussion. Okay, since you've had your epiphanies, you've pulled away from organized religion and the thought that the devil and demons are all out there to turn us away from God and are out to get us at every turn. Now, myself, again, as a paranormal investigator, I've been investigating for 15 years now. In all the times that I've investigated, I have not encountered any case that I would consider to be truly demonic. Although I have talked to many investigators who I highly respect who claim that they have had dealt with cases like that. But I have dealt with a few negative cases and things that have happened that were not pleasant for people. Things were changing. You could look at them possibly as maybe borderline, but they weren't as intense as other cases I've had. There is that type of spiritual entity out there. What are your thoughts on that from that perspective? Do you believe that there are negative entities that can influence us? Not from
my thoughts on that are probably best described as unique. I brought this out a few months ago on my show and on the website, and had a lot of people, very, very upset with me and questioning my sanity and calling me everything but a good guy. But as I have learned and studied and grown and, been moving forward in my own spiritual ascension, I have come to the place, I'll just tell you what I believe, for what it's worth. I believe that I know that this concept of, demons and devils and black and white and good and bad and wrong and right, really, if you get down to it, we know a lot about, science now. We know a lot about energy, and we know a lot about, the smallest particles of energy. And really, you can't say there's bad energy and there's good energy. There's evil energy and there's good energy. What you can say is there's balanced energy and there's unbalanced energy. And what I believe that we are encountering as people when we think that they are, we're talking about demons, it's either one of a couple things. There are, I believe, thought forms out there that have been created by people either themselves manifesting intention. And there's some good documentation on this, that you think it, and eventually that energy can coalesce into what, for lack of a better term, is an entity. And think about this. Think about the Christian church for 2,000 years preaching, thinking, preaching, devil, 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 devil. Is there somewhere a spiritual thought form or a tulpa that has been coalesced into some unbalanced energy and seems to have the ability to manifest personality? There is precedence for that in some literature, and I think that's very possible. So what we're facing when we're talking about demons, quote unquote, is we're facing thought forms, and the biggest thing we're facing, and here's where I get way out in my own field, is that I believe we are facing the unbalanced energy that we have created, that we have unbalanced either currently in our life, in the past in our lives, and quite possibly even in past lives. And this energy that we've unbalanced, energy never goes away. Energy is always there. And it's going to come back to us to try to get us to rebalance that energy so it's no longer unbalanced and causing difficulties. Now, I can, I do spiritual work all the time. I can help you, Mark, balance your energy if you need it, but it's not as good as you learning how to balance your own energy. And the reason why people think that they're so scary sometimes is because it's energy that you originally unbalanced. It's been swollen out there for years and years and years, and it knows you, and sometimes it gains enough, it's not really consciousness, but it gains enough of whatever it gains that it doesn't want to be balanced. It likes where it is, and it knows you, and it tries to create a scenario that's going to prevent you from rebalancing it. So I think what we're fighting is either tulpa, thought forms, and unbalanced energy that we ourselves have created, and ideally we ourselves will rebalance, but sometimes we need a little help from our friends. So that's my answer.
Jeff, I'm going to sit here and tell you, I am like sitting here dancing in my chair, giddy as a schoolboy, because everything that you just touched on is actually something I've been working on for months. It's a theory that I've been working with and working with some other researchers. It's exactly what I totally believe in. In fact, our new novel that came out that you've heard us probably talking about, Demons Dwell the Tower, where my co-author Irene Allen Block and I, she came up with the main story, which involved tulpas. And it involved thought form entities, which started out, people thought it was demonic, and then that's what it turned out to be. And my whole idea on most demonic entities are these thought form entities, maybe not necessarily created by the people who are experiencing them, because if you look at intent, if we are energy, right, and everyone is intent, energy is intent, or intent is energy, I should say. And, you get enough hate. Look at people who threw the old curses, like they threw an evil eye curse on somebody. We laugh at that today. But, many old world countries and for centuries, people were afraid of that. But
I'm sitting here with a red string tied around my left arm for that reason.
Yep. And that's because with that curse, you're putting intent into a form of energy. You are putting hate or negative emotions towards somebody you don't like and you want to harm. And those thoughts have form. That has energy that can coalesce into these lower level entities or thought forms that can go off and almost work independently. And if you look at with what a demon is, it could be either a person creates it or multiple people create it. Let's say you're in an area that has a lot of misery and death or a lot of bad things happening, and people's negative emotions, people going around miserable, full of hate and whatever, that energy is going to go somewhere. And sometimes I feel it coalesces together.
And it attracts like energy.
Well, it forms a low-level consciousness enough that it becomes, in order for it to survive, what does it need? It needs more energy. So
absolutely.
In essence, it becomes a parasite that can attach to people. And if you look at, classic cases, paranormal cases of most of these demonic cases, there's always usually something psychological or like drug abuse or something wrong with the people who are having these issues. And that's an open door for negative energy to attract negative energy. And then what these things do is they can get in your mind because their mind created energy. They can get into a person's mind and they find what scares you the most.
Absolutely.
And it uses those scenarios to create as much fear and turmoil and oppression as possible. And, people say, oh, the demons are trying to kill us. They're trying to kill us. Sometimes maybe that's the end result. But what they're doing is they're trying to keep the cycle going so they can continue to feed. They get stronger and exist. Because if they don't have a food source, they're going to dissipate over time.
Right, and one thing that I left out that needs to definitely be mentioned, and I was taught this, by my good friend Dr. Andy Toltek, and I've been through this enough times to know that it's real. And again, this is, all my beliefs and all the disclaimers that go along with that. But also, I believe that when a person leaves the earth, leaves this body, and they go up to their ascension, everything that's not ascendable will fall off of them. Like, remember watching the Saturn rockets go up and then, the one stage falls off and, it's supposed to burn up, but sometimes these, I call them, fractals. My buddy, Dr. Toltek, he says they're just the choppings from the vegetables that are supposed to go in the garbage disposal. But for some reason, sometimes these energetic fractals do not die. And if they can get, like you say, people to pay attention to them, if they can find negative energy to feed on, they can actually stay alive, and they're really just spiritual space junk. And those things can also form into Tolpe and form into entities that can manifest with, demonic intent.
Let me just jump in here and say it's the bottom of the hour. You're listening to Unknown Origins Radio on the Dark Matter Radio Network. And this is a very, very fascinating discussion we're having about the nature of spirituality, if you will allow me to describe it that way. Can I go back a step and ask you another question, a follow-up? So it appears that when you say the balance, that some of the Eastern beliefs of the yin and yang and the balance that's necessary in all parts of nature and the real universe is not at odds with what you now believe or what you feel is how things work. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's a fair statement, and I believe that if you take a serious and objective look at the teachings of Jesus as we know them, even within the New Testament, you will see teachings and beliefs, and my vocabulary is fleeing me, but points and pieces of other quote-unquote religions in his teaching.
I think that there's a lot of crossover when you really start studying it, and certainly I'm not a religious document scholar by any means, but it's interesting. So let's bring this out into the broader listener audience mindset and talk about the folks that are listening that are involved with organizations that do paranormal research and investigations and so on. Could you describe, and it's probably a tough thing to do in 30 seconds or less, what mindset, what understanding they should approach the paranormal evidence that they may or may not be seeing on an investigation, where it comes from? Is that a fair question? And if so, could you address that?
Well, I'm a complete neophyte in the the paranormal realm. I'm not a paranormal investigator, and never been on a ghost hunt or any of that. I've never even watched any of the TV shows. I'm probably the only guy in America that's never seen a paranormal TV show or an episode of Lost. I'm that guy. But if someone was to ask me advice, I would probably say to them that approach it from an energetic point. Forget about these old paradigms of good, evil, black, white, good, bad, and just approach it from a energetic perspective of balanced energy and unbalanced energy. And in the universe, I mean, we see it just in the laws of the universe, balance is what, think of it as matter and antimatter. If you get too much antimatter, you got a problem. If you get too much matter, you got a problem. But the real, if you can balance it, you can harness it. And so don't look at it as evil, bad, good. Look at it as an energetic issue. If what is manifesting as what we would call bad, that's unbalanced. And it just needs to be, I mean, this pains me as an ex-evangelist to say, you're not really casting out demons, and what you resist tends to persist. So what you need to do with unbalanced energy is flood it with positive energy, and that will cause the unbalanced energy to rephase, and it comes back into balance. I've seen it. I've done it. It's remarkable, and it has the virtue of working every time it's tried.
Well, Mark, I just want to jump in there. Mark, that certainly flies in the face of a lot of historically what we've seen with groups that, antagonize and aggravate to try to elicit response from some type of entity.
Can I interject on that real quickly? It's fascinating to me that you say that, because back in the day when I was a Pentecostal evangelist, we had these idiots that would go out and they would antagonize these demons they were casting out of people. I would say, like Jesus did, in the name of Jesus, come out and be quiet, shut up. These other guys would be like poking the demon with a stick, and they would get it to put on a show, and they would tape record it and sell the cassettes.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's
it's a show. That's why they were doing it.
And we, Mark, you and I know, and certainly the folks that are listening that have watched some of the shows, this is not an uncommon scenario. And I think it's, first of all, it's running around with a flare in your hand in a gasoline depot, for one thing. Exactly. And secondly, I think it's arrogant and ignorant and it's exploitive. So that's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it. But that's why I wanted to get that straight, that your approach, although it may not be as dramatic in its execution, the final result, it seems to have in your experience, a much more positive outcome. So
your goal should be zero drama, because zero drama is zero trauma.
And very well stated.
You mentioned just a minute ago about these paranormal groups that go in and they provoke and to stir things up for television or for their own evidence. But, let's face it, when you're going in and provoking and threatening and taunting, negative energy, and what do they feed on? Negative energy, and they get stronger. And of course, they're going to respond. There's a lot of these exorcisms where they come in from like the Catholic Church, or they, and even the possessed person seems to react to the holy water or the casting out. But I've always looked at it as, if these thought form entities are created by man has these beliefs. If a devout Christian, even if somebody who's like a satanic worshiper, and they're putting that evil intent out there, that personality, that part of their personality is going to go right along with it. So you know what? There would probably be these entities, these thought forms would follow those guidelines. Otherwise, it'd be like go to Tibet and try to cast out a demon from a Tibetan monk who using Christian theology. And it's not going to work.
Nope.
Because they don't believe it. That's not what they believe. But if you did something along with their beliefs, then it would work, because
you'd do it in Tennessee, you'd be in good shape.
Yeah, those thought forms are being created in that area around those people, the culture, and it's a part of their personalities that's coming through these entities. That's
an excellent point, Mark. I never really thought through it to that degree, but that's a very excellent point.
So let me ask you, in terms of that, Jesus cast out demons, and according to the stories of the Bible. And, I take a lot of the stories with a grain of salt, because we know a lot of those were fiction from other stories, melted in over time. But, Yeshua, or how you pronounce it, was more interesting.
Well, Yahashua is like the William, Yeshua is like Bill.
Okay. Where these, who not trying to change the subject. I'm trying to look at it from the terms of within our conversation about these thought form entities. Who do you think Yeshua was? Was he the Son of God, or is our concept of God wrong? And who was he really? What do you think he was?
The answer to all of those questions, I just kind of or codified it. I'm not sure how you pronounce that word, but I put it down pen to paper and put it on a show not 2 weeks ago. If you look into the Bible and if you believe the words of the Bible and what they mean as far as the original language is, in the beginning, Genesis 1:1, God created the heavens and the earth. The word God there is Elohim, which means male and female, multiple gods. So, correctly rendered, it would have been, in the beginning, the gods created the heavens and the earth. And this entity called the Lord, this being called the Lord, capital L-O-R-D, he doesn't show up until Genesis 2, chapter 4. And if you flip over with in the beginning, God, the gods created the heavens and the earth, John chapter 1, verse 1, speaking of Jesus, says, in the beginning was the Word. And if you read the whole first chapter of John, it's clear they're referring to Jesus or Yahushua. In the beginning was Jesus. Jesus was with the gods, and Jesus was one of the gods, and nothing that has been made without being made by him. So by looking at the text and looking at the words of Jesus, to answer your question, the gods, the male and female gods, which makes perfect sense when they say in Genesis 1:26 and 27, let us make man in our image, and they made them male and female. It's perfect language correlation. It makes perfect sense intellectually. Male and female gods create male and female. And then Yahushua was, by the evidence of John chapter 1, verse 1, one of those Elohim.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Possibly one of those Elohim who took a human form. I mean, sometimes
the Elohim would come to, and this gets into something else I've just recently been talking about. We're reading from the same page here. The Elohim were able at times, and I'm just going to throw this out there and completely freak everybody out. The Elohim, being mature and old gods, so to speak, they could take bodily form. They knew how to do it. And they could take bodily form and leave bodily form, go back and forth. Adam and Eve, whether it was one man and one woman or whether it's representative of humanity, they saw that, they wanted to do that, they couldn't do that. And here comes the Lord, I believe, who created these, again, spiritual beings, energetic beings, Adam and Eve, man and woman. And the Lord creates these bodies out of dust and dirt and mud, puts them in this garden, and I believe, and I can back this up, but we don't have the time tonight, when we talk about eating of the garden, the tree of the garden of knowledge of good and evil, that tree was the bodies that the Lord created, and he conned Adam and Eve, whoever they were, if they were individuals or collectively, into these trees in order to be able to understand good and evil, all the knowledge that the Elohim had. And that's why in the New Testament, when Jesus healed a guy that had been blind from birth, he says, heal me. Jesus, very distracted. You could see he was very busy. He healed the guy, and Jesus says, how do you feel? And the guy says, I see men as trees walking. Guy had never seen a tree, never seen a man. If you get into the Greek, it says, I see these spirit beings walking around in like wooden zombies. And then Jesus and John say the axe is laid to the root of the tree. And, of course, Jesus prayed for that guy again because he had healed him to, he was seeing the spiritual realm, and he put his hands on him again, and he saw the physical realm. Oh, I see, physical beings. And then Jesus and John the Baptist say the axe is laid to the root of the trees. We're at the place now where the tree, the wood, the cases can fall away, and we can learn to get out of the body, which is not us. So that's a whole new can of worms, but that's a recent revelation and discovery I've come to.
Wow, that's interesting. Obviously haven't heard that before.
And I've got documentation for all of it, and you can check out my YouTube channel and all that and my website, and it's all there.
I'll be running that through my mind for
But it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it does.
It does.
Because I've always wondered about that men as trees walking. It's one of those verses. I've read the Bible at least 100 times, and every time I'm like, what does this mean? It has no context. It's like, why is it there? It's there, and it's there in that context, so we will say, what the hell does this mean? And then we study it, and we realize it all comes together, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, that was a wow moment. I'll give you that one.
Now,
fascinating.
Now, yeah, I mean, I'm like a little stunned here, trying to get my mind about it. I mean, I'm right with you on this. I understand all this. You know, a lot of people who don't understand these things, like even right now, there's some folks in the chat room who are asking, you know, what are Elohim? They haven't
Is
heard
he crazy? Is what they're asking.
Well, you know what? This is one of those great, passionate, fun discussions that we have that can drive everyone crazy. But you know what? It's better than being boring. The people don't understand what the Elohim were, or the original language of these ancient documents, and how now when we have all the multiple translations, from Greek and Latin, and then finally into Old English, thee and thy and thine.
Right.
And now we have the new English version. But you know what? Nobody really takes the time to study the language, the linguistics of the time period these writings were written in. And let's face it, we don't have any originals. Those were lost eons ago.
They were destroyed by Rome and England as they, rebranded everything.
There you go. A little manipulation never hurt anybody.
Well,
exactly. History has always been written by the winners.
Exactly. And
Thank you, Mr. Churchill.
It wouldn't surprise me if the great library at Alexandria may have had some of those original copies. And, the popes and the Islam and everybody who destroyed that library, couple of different times, destroyed all of that knowledge that for thousands of years was being collected. God, what we have lost. And
let me jump in here as an advocate, perhaps, of some of the listeners. Why is this discussion germane? Why are we discussing this on unknown origin? To me, in my mind, this is every bit relevant to the real world. There's not a separate compartment of the spiritual world and the real world. This is all part of our existence, and so it's very relevant. And I think, it fills in my mind some of the questions that made what I was raised in with regard to spiritual matters. Let's face it, there's a very fine dividing line by anybody's definition between the paranormal and spiritual. So it's very relevant to the discussion in the community of paranormal research to say this is all part of the same world. And unlike what I was taught growing up, or at least I must not have been paying attention because it was as full of holes as Swiss cheese. Just the point that you just made from Genesis is, to me, revolutionary in my understanding of what was going on there and the context. We've talked about the Watchers, the Nephilim. You can go over to the Brahmanas in the Indian culture,
absolutely,
and talk about that. And so my point is, it's very relevant. It is not an esoteric discussion of philosophy and so on. This is part of the world that we, in my mind, understand very little of, but it's very relevant. I'd like to know what's going to happen.
It's the real world.
And so I think it's spot on in what we're trying to do with this radio show. And to me, I find it fascinating. I think it's very educational for me. It opens my eyes. And I hope the listeners agree with that and understand where we're coming from with this.
Now let me throw something new monkey wrench into the works here for our last 15 minutes.
Just as long as it's not a real monkey wrench, you can throw it at me.
I don't know. Maybe it'll finally fix Skype. What are your thoughts then? If we're talking about spiritual beings, the Elohim, we are spiritual beings. We have spiritual form it's interacting in these physical bodies. Then what about other entities? What about possibility of other entities in the universe on multiple dimensions? Let's face it, and not only are ghosts very popular in the paranormal these days, but UFOs are very popular, and people think, beings coming from other planets. And yet there's this high strangeness that's involved. And I mean, I've interviewed quite a few people who have had firsthand encounters with these supposed visitors, aliens, whatever you want to call them. I've read a lot of works, between Whitley Strieber and what he's experienced, and Stan Romanek case, and Audrey Hewins, and all these people. These types of beings are not just advanced physical beings living on other planets. There seems to be this multi-dimensional, interdimensional, spiritual aspect to these beings. I mean, in your terms, since you're not as familiar with a lot of the other paranormal aspects, what are your thoughts on that, or have you ever had any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have had some thoughts on it. As everybody, you get into this whole battle of semantics. Are they demons? Are they ETs? Are they interdimensional beings? Are they time travelers? Are they us from the future? Who are they? I understand and know from the laws of science and from the laws of spirituality that I've been able to see and observe and be a part of, that the energy requirement to go from what we would call the astral or another dimension and to physically come into this dimension, like, I'm touching my cat right now, for him to come from another dimension into this dimension, the physics of it and the energy requirement is stupendous. So to me, that says there's got to be either some type of portals or something they can come through, or more likely, we try to think, we think of these things as a layer cake, 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe it's more like concentric rings on a tree, that we're all, like, radio stations, all of these dimensions may be here simultaneously with us, and we just phase into or tune into one or another. But a lot of times I think with the ETs, and I have done some study and work with people on, that are being, harassed by what they would call ETs. I think a lot of times what is happening is there's, astral beings that, because they can't physically get into this realm, they drop what's called an astral screen, and it's almost like they're projecting that they're there, but they're really not, or they pull that person astrally up to where they are. And to the people, it seems like I was in the thing that opened my eyes for me, and I'm trying to be quick. I was in Central America 20 years ago, preaching to natives, chopping through the jungle, the whole thing. We're preaching there 7 nights with an older gentleman who's now passed. Witch doctor walks in, the big headdress and everything. None of them spoke English. He says in perfect English, "Your God has no power. Let me show you power." He lays down on the ground. He floats up, levitates 6 feet high in a hut in the middle of the Central American jungle. And I'm getting ready to let him have the "in the name of Jesus" thing. And my buddy's like, no, wait. When he finally got 6 feet in the air, then my buddy said, "Now give it to him, in the name of Jesus." He falls down, boom, gets the wind knocked out of him, and all the natives, receive Jesus. Come to realize now, and through study and through, kind of reliving and relooking at that, what really happened was those entities, whoever was controlling him, dropped an astral screen, and we thought we saw the guy really levitate. He wasn't really levitating. That was either being projected on what I call an astral screen, or we had all been pulled, quote unquote, into the astral. It didn't really actually happen, I don't believe, but I think that's a good example of what happens many times when people are visited by these ETs or these aliens.
Wow. Wow, that's some story.
There's a case. There's a couple of different cases that we've worked on in the past. And things that have come up this last week that I've posted on Facebook. Irene with Spirit Rescue International, she posted this photo that she calls a time traveler, and it's on our Facebook page, which she and another woman investigator were standing in a bathroom which had activity in this house. Nobody else was around. They took this photo, and in the mirror, and I'm not kidding, is a third person, clear and sharp and crisp as life, a man who seems to be in the middle of walking. He's right between her and her other investigator, and he's holding this strange device. We can't tell. He's wearing these dark clothing, and he appears to be wearing a helmet, a dark black helmet. When you zoom in, you could see the rim of it with a large chin strap, totally out of place in this house in Wales. And he's moving like with intent in this photo. And it's not a ghost. It's not what you would think of as a ghost or an apparition. He's solid. He looks like a person. Was not there when that photo was taken. And it's one of those things where people look, well, probably a ghost or apparition. It's one of those things where I want to look at it and say, is this a picture from a different time period? Is it a picture? It almost looks futuristic what he's wearing,
Right.
And is it another dimension that just happened to bleed over at that one moment and we caught it in a photograph? Yeah. I don't know. And then another one who we were talking.
And the best thing about it, Mark, is we may not ever really be able to explain it all.
Exactly. I was just going to mention another. There's an old client of mine that I investigated on a very long-term case, who was telling me this week about when she was a little girl in another house, how there was this man, and we call him the Hat Man. And you hear of entities who almost look like Men in Black.
Sounds like a shadow man.
Yeah, a shadow man, but wearing a fedora, trench coat, but not a shadow. He was clear. The only thing she couldn't make out was his face, but she could see his body. He's clear. Actually talked to her. And at one point said, suggested maybe she go to bed, so she's not up late and getting into trouble. It was almost like a friend to her, and she remembers it very vividly and clearly.
Mark, was this before Slender Man?
This was like 40 years ago.
Oh, okay.
It's way before Slender Man, way before any of the. She was talking about when she was a child, and she's my age, in her 50s now, and so having that type of an experience. What that kind of being could be, not a traditional ghost or a spirit, right. But yet it would also disappear when it wanted to. It would flash in and out of our existence. So,
and I think there can also be those benevolent, astral beings as well. I mean, I have, in recent times, I've had some interaction with someone that calls herself Diana. I don't have any reason to doubt that she's Diana, and even with Mary. And they're definitely benevolent beings.
Wow. If I could quick jump in for a summary, two quick things. First, I want to find out how to let the listeners know how to get in touch with you and how to follow your work and buy your book and follow up on this. But secondly, I have a real quick question. What is your goal to exploit in the most positive sense of the definition, your gift of being able to do this time travel, or however you'd like to describe your capabilities? Where do you want to go with that? What would you like to do with that ultimately?
The reason that I started doing it, and my highest hope would be for someone to say, you know what, maybe this guy is not 100% crazy, and maybe I should take 30 seconds and actually look at and think about what he's presenting. If I can get people for 20 seconds to have an original thought and start asking themselves better questions, then my work here is done.
Well, you have my word that I'm going to follow up with you, and if we can put together an ironclad demonstration, not to be a sideshow and not to make you out to be some kind of freak, but to say, look, this is real. Now listen to what I have to say. Make up your own mind. You have my word. I would love to help you do that. Secondly, how can people visit your website? Tell us how they can get in touch with you and so forth.
Yeah, everything that I'm doing and saying and trying to accomplish is found on www.imnck.com. And I'm putting together, I'm only, the money that it takes to put together an RV away from launching a national tour where I'll be speaking, doing book signings, hopefully doing some spiritual work. And I imagine that to go on for years. I'll be divesting of everything I have here in Orlando, jumping in an RV and hitting the road, I guess, going back to being a Pentecostal evangelist again without the Pentecostal part. But www.imnck, that stands for New Cosmic Knowledge. You can find all the down and dirty.
He's known as the Christian Whistleblower. Once again, here's Jeffrey Daugherty.
Well, there you have it, folks. Great stuff. Thanks again to Mark on the Unknown Origins program, and also to the Dark Matter Radio Network for having me on. It was a great opportunity to get a good review, a good introduction, and to tee us up for where we're going. Now, tomorrow night, we'll be back with our regular programming, and I've really enjoyed this. I think I'm going to highlight some of our good interviews. We'll probably highlight the Coast to Coast AM interview with George Norrie. We'll highlight my interview on this show with George Norrie as well when he was on a few months back. So we're gonna bring out some of the best, and I'm mystified as to why our YouTube numbers aren't any more than what they are. And we just got to get this thing rocking and rolling. We're going to get out there on the road. That's going to make a big difference. And you can help me. Ask yourself how you can help me, and get in contact with me, and let's make this thing happen. Let's get what has to be one of the most important messages ever out there. And also, intrepidmag.com, my new column in the Intrepid magazine. The first month is out today, and I encourage you, if I can speak straight, to go look at Intrepid Magazine or intrepidmag.com and avail yourself of that excellent magazine. It has Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock on the front of it this week. The new Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, and no, not the ones from the movies, but the ones from the excellent serial Star Trek Continues. Look up both of those. Read my article. You'll enjoy it, and it'll be one every month. So tomorrow, we'll be back with a regular program, and until then, I am Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian whistleblower, wishing you peace and light.
Stay connected with the largest spiritual network on the planet, www.imnck.com. On Facebook, Jeffrey Daugherty and Jeffrey Daugherty Show. And on Twitter at NC Kabbalah. Visit imnck.com today and learn how to create yourself and live the life you'll love.